Growing up, I went to 15 different public schools. So that's from K through 12th grade. And that's a lot. So, that's more than, one school a year. At one point, I went to 3 different schools in 1 year. So, it wasn't very stable per se. I mean, my family's wonderful. They're working and they have to move. And you are a little kid, you do adjust with that. And so I really had that lack of stability kind of drove me to just learn how to adapt really, really quickly. You have to adapt in all of these different situations. You have to kind of turn yourself into a chameleon in order to just not only fit in, but just to kind of try to thrive in these different environments all of the time. And so I think that level of instability and needing to adapt into new surroundings put me into the space where I'm at now, because I don't necessarily fear the unknown, right?
Welcome back, friends, and thanks so much for being here for this episode of She Lights the Way, where we celebrate the journeys of unsung women who are making contributions to our world in meaningful ways. I'm your host, Nicole Huesman. Today, we're diving deep with Brittany Istenes, a woman whose life has been a series of bold pivots and fearless adaptations. Brittany learned to thrive in uncertainty at an early age, becoming a chameleon in every new environment. She didn't just talk about adapting, she lived it, spending 2.5 years following the Grateful Dead, selling food in parking lots, and experiencing life on the road. Then she took the lessons of adaptability and community she learned on the road and channeled them into a career in special education and technology. Today, she's working in an open source program office for a major financial firm, advocating for remote work and inclusion in tech. During our discussion, Brittany cuts through the noise, sharing her no-nonsense perspective on embracing change, the importance of community, and why forcing people back into offices may be a mistake. Ready for a conversation that's as unfiltered and real and as fun as it gets? Let's go.
Brittany, it is fantastic, wonderful to talk to you today. I am so glad you are spending a little bit of time with us. Can you introduce yourself and just tell us a little bit about you and where you are at this point, personally and professionally?
So yes, thank you so much for having me, Nicole. This is really a fantastic experience, and I'm so thrilled to be a part of it. So I'm Brittany Istenes. I currently work in an open source program office for a large financial firm here in the United States. I'm based out of Cleveland, Ohio, which is amazing because I love remote work. Remote work is the best work. And one thing that I can say is don't try to force people to go back to the office. Please, please don't do that. If they want to, they can. But yeah, so based out of Cleveland, Ohio, avid Cleveland Browns football fan. And that's one of the reasons why I moved back, which is a strange reason to move to Cleveland for the Cleveland Browns. And my family's all here, and I love it.
That is great. Grew up watching football. It was one of the ways that, I really built a relationship with my dad, when we bonded over football. So totally get it. Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about what your early influences were and how they've impacted where you are today?
Growing up, I went to 15 different public schools. So that's from K through 12th grade. And that's a lot. So, that's more than, one school a year. At one point, I went to 3 different schools in 1 year. So, it wasn't very stable per se. I mean, my family's wonderful. They're working and they have to move, and you are a little kid and you do adjust with that. And so I really had that lack of stability kind of drove me to just learn how to adapt really, really quickly. you have to adapt in all of these different situations. You have to kind of turn yourself into a chameleon in order to just not only fit in, but just to kind of try to thrive in these different environments all of the time. And so I think that level of instability and needing to adapt into new surroundings put me into the space where I'm at now because I don't necessarily fear the unknown, right?
Yeah.
Because I don't know what it's going to be.
Right, right. Yes. And that's such a life skill.
Yeah. And you learn, and you do learn a lot about yourself as well. And you do end up learning a lot about the human experience too, because you have to force yourself to understand the concept of trust. And if you trust incorrectly, that could come back, and that could come back and alter different decisions that have been made in your life. Right. And you have to just be mindful of your surroundings.
I have a 13-year-old son, and one of the things that I wanted to do with him very early on is when I put him into summer camps, I didn't there were other and I understand this, there were other parents who would always make sure that there was somebody else that their child knew in a particular summer
Mhm.
camp. I I actually was not one of those. I
That's
actually would put him into camps where he didn't know anyone and needed to adapt and learn how to make friends and all of that. I really tried to give him that experience of learning how to adapt to different situations.
good. And that's good because, you do find folks that end up falling into that pattern of they don't like change. They fear it almost. And I'm of the mindset that you need to embrace it because you have to in life, you do have to pivot. And there are so many different situations that can arise relatively quickly. And being able to fully grasp some of these different concepts, especially when interacting with other humans, is helpful in how you handle those sort of tough situations.
One of the things I think is so wonderful about the college experience is learning how to, you know, relate to different people,
Mhm.
especially when you've got so many people from so many different backgrounds. Can you talk a little bit about your college experience?
My college experience was really interesting, right? So I didn't want to go to college right away. I couldn't. I was accepted into a university and I didn't know what I wanted to do. I'm 18 years old, right? I'm used to this constant fluid motion of life and I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I'm not in my mind, I thought I would have failed, right? I wouldn't have been able to really grasp into that college life right away. And so, to the behest of my mother, she was very upset about this. I'm just going to say it. I love the Grateful Dead. I do. I think they are just a fantastic band, like Jerry Garcia, like the whole thing. I love the Grateful Dead. And so, when I was 18, they were touring. And so I took off on the road, packed up my car, took off and followed that band around. And I did that for like 2.5 years. I went to 50 different shows. I sold food in the parking lot, which was how I got through, which talk about, you just get your little Coleman grill and I'm just selling grilled cheese and chicken Parmesan quesadillas for $5 and you just get enough gas money to get to the next spot, doing all of those things, right? And that's what I did. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I really didn't. And I felt that college is so expensive and coming from a space of not, growing up in an affluent household, I had to do everything on my own regardless. And so, yeah, it was a wonderful household, right? But I still had to do a lot of things for myself. And so I just took off and followed that band for 2.5 years and super
That
interesting. But yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that
Mhm.
is so cool. And I mean, you're really making your way in the world, right? I mean, you're right, you're selling food in the parking lot, you're meeting all of these different people, right? I mean, that's amazing, right? I mean, because so many of us don't know what we want to do, right? And
Mhm.
I thought I was gonna go be the doctor of a football team, right? And find out, I've this chemistry class, and it was deer in the headlights. I knew this was not going to be my path. And then, when it's like, okay, now what? Right. And that's when I really made a big jog towards, well, not big jog. I'd always been interested in writing and very curious person. And, but it's when I made my jog towards journalism. Right.
Mhm.
So I love you following your, hey, I don't know what I want to do. I love the Grateful Dead. I'm going to go, hang out and, support myself in a
Yeah.
really, unique and interesting way and
Mhm.
meet lots of different interesting people and do my thing.
Lots of
I
interesting
love that.
people. Lots
Yeah.
of interesting people. And that's, going back to that ability, like you need to adapt into these different situations. The little behest to myself, I was joining into a community, right? That is what it is. You have a couple hundred people that do this and you have thousands of people that see that band. You're in this interesting space, right? And I that's where I started learning about that concept of, community would kind of is, when we get to it, kind of led me to where I'm at now. Mhm.
Yeah. Oh, that's magical. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
really was your first foray or dipping your toe into, how a community works and what brings a community together and
Mhm,
all of that and being part of a community and being a good steward of that community. And
mhm.
that's wow, that I love that. That's really cool.
Well, we know that that can't last forever, right?
Sure.
It can't
Yeah.
last forever, so, I had to, once again, pivot and shift, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm,
Yeah. So it's amazing that you've had so many different pivots, right? Early on, you really learned to adapt from moving
mhm.
so often. And then you really, gosh, I don't know what I want to do. I'm going to go follow the dead and, and right. And become it really an integral part of that community and,
Mhm.
right. And then you pivot again. So can you
Yeah.
tell us about that?
So, I traveled the country, then I realized, okay, well, all right, now I'm 20 years old. Well, I should probably do something. Like that hippy dippy lifestyle, it's just not sustainable. So I need to do something, right? That's always one thing I've always had is I've always been driven to be independent, right? That was one of the most important things that I really focused in on. So I decided maybe it is time to go to college. So what I did is I didn't just jump right to university. I was like, listen, I'm still figuring it out. I'm going to try my hand at community college. Right, community college is one of the most from a university perspective, I feel like it's really underappreciated, and I think that community college should get more accreditation for what it does. You have the most phenomenal teachers in this space teaching a variety of different things so that you can figure out what you're going to do, as well as it's a lot cheaper to get all of those, like, math and science and English credits too before you transfer to a large scale university, and depending on where you go, they do transfer over. So if anybody's listening, and if you do have kids or if you're younger and you're trying to figure out where you wanna go to school, or if you're older and you wanna go back to school, I love community college. I love it. So, I studied music theory at first in community college. I was like, "Oh, okay," just going back to you're like, "I'm gonna be a doctor of football." Well, I studied music theory and then I realized, oh, I'm not that good. I wasn't. I honestly, I was just not that good. Once we got into Phrygian half cadences and I had to shift up and down on the classical guitar and mandolin, I was like, okay, I'm not good at this. And I don't think that I would be able to commit to something along these lines to make a living. Right.
Yeah.
So I decided I wanted to become a teacher, but I knew I wanted to work in special education. I did. I think that that is such not even a noble field, a needed field. There are people because we always think about children with special needs or differently able, and you're like, okay, well, we'll guide them through the education process, and then boom, what's going to happen when they are in their 20s? Right? How are these adults going to be supported? So I always wanted to get involved into that. And so I started looking around at colleges and I found Temple University in Philadelphia. They had one and still have one of the most phenomenal education graduation paths, I
Yeah.
think, in the country. They have some of the
Yeah.
most phenomenal teachers there. So I started at Temple. I moved to Philadelphia when I was 22. And I just started, I lived in, graduate hospital area of Philadelphia, got my own little 700 square foot apartment. Great rent. Shocking. Can't find that today. And rode my bike from basically Center City every day up to Temple University. I was in such good shape.
Oh, wow.
But I did. Yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's
Hmm.
wild. Yeah. It's interesting because after college, I ended up moving to Washington, D.C., right? And lived on the outskirts of D.C. But
Hmm.
yeah, I mean, what wonderful places to be when you're young and you're lapping it all in, right? And you're just
Hmm.
you're experiencing life. I mean, these places are so vibrant. And it was
Absolutely.
just such a great place to be at that point in my life. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, and I can
agreed.
imagine, yeah, the same for you.
Yeah, I stayed in Philadelphia for 15 years. I graduated from Temple. I have a still holding in Pennsylvania a lifetime certification and through 12th grade special educator, and then K through 6th grade elementary educator. And so I loved it. I ended up teaching. I went and I got a job. 2 weeks. 2 weeks after graduation,
Oh,
I landed a job at a
wow.
school.
Oh,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
love it, yeah. So, you're right, I mean, special education is so needed. I mentioned my son, he has ADHD, right? So, we have things that we deal with there. Mental health of children in our country is a real issue.
Oh,
And,
absolutely.
I mean, in just finding him a counselor and getting him help with his ADHD has been a challenge. It's been a real struggle, and so I'd love to hear that, that you went into special education. And
Mhm.
can you talk a little bit about that? That's so vital.
Absolutely. So when I did accept the position at a school in Southwest Philadelphia, we didn't have as many resources as, let's say, the schools on the main line, right? We really didn't. And, the classes were a bit crowded, but the students were there to learn. One thing that I took away from it is patience. One of the biggest things that I took away from this experience, especially when teaching with children, you have kids that are going through a bad day, right? And I worked with teachers that all, and like even coming up in practicums, I had teachers that were in front of a classroom of 30 children and they couldn't handle it. They yelled, they would get frustrated, and because they didn't understand the game. And I told a lot of people, I was like, listen, they're little, you're big. They're going to have meltdown, right?
Yeah,
And quieter you are, quieter they're going to be.
yeah.
And we were able to really thrive in that environment. The 2 years that I was teaching there, we closed the achievement gap on the statewide testing. 4th and 5th graders closed the achievement gap and became proficient in reading and math and science. Well, the students did such an amazing job. We closed the achievement gap in science by like 92%. And that school was recognized because of the work that these kids did by the president at the time, which was Barack Obama, which was cool. That
Wow.
was real cool.
Wow. Yeah,
Yeah.
that is very cool.
Yeah.
That is very cool.
Those kids were so proud of themselves. And what's so interesting too is, quite a few years back, I'm still living in Philadelphia and I have a different job. I'm sitting on the trolley, read my book, and then one of the kids' parents comes up to me. And I was like, oh, hi, how's it going? And she was like, thank you so much. My son is now in the 11th grade learning Mandarin. I was like, what? That's crazy.
Wow.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Wow.
And then I had another one of my students reach out to me a couple of months ago on LinkedIn who just graduated from Penn State and now has an internship at a major tech company in DC.
Oh my gosh, Brittany, this is amazing.
Yeah,
Like, I'm getting goosebumps. This is
it
just
was so
right.
cool.
I
I'm so
mean,
proud of those kids, all of them,
yes.
all of
Yes.
them.
I mean, oh, and what an impact that you've had on their lives.
And now they're
Yeah.
turning into good adults because at the end of the day, remember, they're little, you're big, and everybody's going through something, right? And that's, going all back to the adaptability, trying to figure out everything, that patience comes in.
Gosh, I love hearing about these kids and what they've gone on to
Hmm.
do. So I had a proud mom moment about a week ago or so. Yeah,
I
um,
love that.
yeah, where, a couple of years ago, Duncan would not have been in this situation. So he was paired up with a special education child in his classroom.
Okay.
And right, they were working on a science project. And this other child had an idea about how he wanted to approach the project, and Duncan had his own idea about how he wanted to approach the project. And,
Hmm.
you know, the other child was getting very frustrated, and Duncan actually worked with him through this, and suggested, well, why don't we try your idea this week and we'll try my idea next week? And then we'll
Hmm.
put together the best of both of our approaches. And, at one point, this child was getting upset, and Duncan was able to calm him down and work with
Awesome.
him through the situation. And I thought, oh my gosh, because a couple of years ago, Duncan would have been, I think, that other child frustrated in the classroom,
Mhm.
and needing help to work through the frustration. And I thought,
Mhm.
oh my gosh, I'm seeing progress, right?
Yeah,
I'm seeing this person really mature before my eyes, right? And I
exactly.
just I just was so elated. I can't even tell
That's
you
a
just
proud mom moment. That's growth, right?
yeah, yeah,
Understanding, like, when you understand, like anybody with like, especially mental health disorders, 'cause I have a generalized anxiety disorder, and I've gotten a lot of help for that to not end up spiraling, right? And that's another thing that I don't think a lot of people, can talk about. It's hard. It's really hard. And so when you learn these coping skills and you understand that this is what it is in my brain, even though that can be hard, that's still
yeah.
a huge victory.
So how did you then go from being a special education teacher to,
Yeah,
because you make another pivot,
I
right?
do. Yeah, I do. I make another pivot. And that's the craziest thing. Like, keep pushing for new challenges. So I ended up falling into an educational tech company. I used this program in my school and I actually helped bring it into the school. And I was like, this is actually really effective. So, what can we do to help teachers be more effective in their practices? Well, I actually believed in this product and I was like, this is great. I saw an opportunity. I looked at the job board and I was like, okay, I'm applying. I applied and I got the job. And I started off as like a help
Yay.
desk. I did. I was just like a help desk, because I used the program. I knew how to do the website of things, not the actual like web development side of things, but I knew how to help teachers that would write in saying, I don't understand the system. Well, now the teachers are understanding how the system works, right? Well, what about superintendents? What about the principal? What about the people that are actually signing the checks over to these companies? Do they understand the impact of? And so I kind of, over the course of 4 years within this company, kind of got my way in a little bit to kind of raise to the ranks of actually being one of the lead tech, not trainers, but tech enthusiasts, almost like the strategist for how more schools can adapt this sort of information. Partnered really tightly with sales. And then in between that time, I'm just learning all these backend systems, like how, SQL runs, how these database runs, how, all of these like sort of like, yeah, the GUI interfaces and how like the user experience, the UI, UX. And I'm just like learning this stuff, just like kind of observing and listening, no formal training. Like I graduated with a bachelor's degree in education, right?
Yeah,
I don't have a
right.
master's degree now. So I'm just adapting, soaking it up like a sponge.
I remember back to the time when we said, "Oh, wow, technology in the classroom, that's gonna be so
Mhm.
fantastic," right? We started with, we think technology is gonna be fantastic for teachers and students,
Mhm.
and what I found, and this was, I think, particularly during the pandemic, was when I had the aha moment, that we've put technology in the classrooms
Mhm.
without truly providing support and education for administrators, for teachers,
Mhm.
for, right? And so we've fallen down somewhere, right?
Yeah.
We've fallen down as an industry that, okay, we've said, okay, here you go. Here's the technology for your
Mhm.
classroom. Have fun, right? And
Exactly.
and not supporting and not educating them about how best to use it, what to
Mhm.
do, what not to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was another thing that I did at the school too, right? I was one of they gave us a grant and we got all these products and nobody knew how to use them. And so
Go.
I just sat there and I was like, okay, I'm gonna figure it out. Figured it out, became the lead tech trainer.
Wow, wow. Oh
Mhm.
my gosh, you had just done such impactful work.
I actually like have not ever really thought about it like this before. So it's kind of
Mm.
interesting to share that. I'm like, oh, I guess that was a good thing. I never think like that, Nicole,
Oh,
ever.
wow,
That's
wow.
interesting.
So you make your next shift.
Yep. I'm starting to get to the point now where in my life, as I'm getting older, I need it to be more stable. And so I realized at the time also too, I'm no longer learning from this company that I'm working at. So that sponge was full. So
Yeah.
I plateaued and I said, I can't sustain this anymore. I can't, I'm not obviously the type of person that's going to continue with that coasting lifestyle. It'll drive me nuts. I'll coast when I retire. So I went to a larger company just as a contractor, just to see what it was like. But let's just say the first month of that was horrible, horrible. It's kind of where my anxiety disorder started. And so, mind you, I had a stable job of teaching for 2 years, worked in an educational technology company for 4 years, stable, awesome,
Yeah.
thinking that this was going to be the next move. And, the sponge was full and I was trying to get into that. And I failed. I felt like a failure. I felt horrible, right? It was just not a very healthy space. And luckily, I was able to jump into a really cool sneaker company. Like
Wow.
literally, I became the head of the IT program management, project management for all these projects for this company called DTLR, Sneaker Villa. And they were awesome. It was awesome. Like, I'm getting, like, helping these teams sell, like, limited edition Jordans and, like, really cool sneakers, and, like, the culture was really interesting, and everybody was super supportive. My boss at the time, Chuck LaPlaca, he was absolutely fantastic. It was it was what I needed to refill my soul, right?
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
could not ever be more grateful. When you're sitting in a conference room, and mind you, I didn't know what I was doing really. Like, I'm still new, right? You're sitting at a conference room full of men, and they listened, and they
Wow.
listened. So that job gave me a lot of confidence,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I forever grateful for that opportunity.
Yeah. So
Mhm.
out of this really horrible situation comes almost this lesson of being let go, and you're sitting here feeling like a failure only
That was
to
horrible.
go on to this amazing opportunity. So Brittany, let me ask you, when you were in that sort of that pit of feeling failure,
Mm.
because I've been there. And for me, it was working within a toxic work culture. So how do you think you got through that? How do you think you overcame it?
I'll put it this way, I still am not through it. That's really truthful. I still have effects from that, right? The way that you treat others can seriously harm someone. And then so I did the crazy thing, right? So, I'm at this nice supported environment. And then I started learning about open source software, right? I started learning about that. And then this opportunity came up. So work at a large tech company underneath a woman by the name of Nithya Roth. For
Mm,
those that don't know Nithya, just look her up. Amazing human being. Nithya knew and took a chance on me, her and her entire team. They brought me on board to work in their open source program office. They took me on and they taught me so much, right?
Yeah.
Sheila Sabi gave me the confidence to go out and speak in public. Krista Kare like helped understand my compliance knowledge. Ananya Malaku, she really honed in on methodology and process with me. I mean, and then also Carl Leiby, engineering, programming, and Nithya, of course, with her kindness, her expertise, and her willing to take a chance.
Yeah.
Like those
Yeah.
people really changed my life in my career, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll forever be grateful to that open source program off. They're amazing. I think that the level of confidence that I was able to build, especially, I have a generalized anxiety disorder now, right? Like I do. And so now I'm thrust into public speaking. How does and then I didn't even think that I had the ability, and that's led me down like the craziest, most positive path, which is unbelievable.
And I had a, a handful of mentors, really, really, really great mentors, and set me on the path to me being more active in the open source community, also set me on the path to speaking at conferences or moderating panels at conferences. And so it's just so vital, the mentors that we have in our lives, right?
Or my current lead right now is fantastic. His name's John Mark Walker. He is a huge open source advocate. He's absolutely fantastic. I'm learning a lot from this person, and this person really has given me now in my new career shift. He's really given that runway with very few guardrails because there's trust there. And I've learned so much from him as well. And I still am.
You really point to one thing that is a great thing to bring up here, and that is men who are advocates and allies. And I have had so many. She Lights the Way isn't just about women, and it isn't just for women, but it's also about the men in our lives who have really advocated for us and given us these different opportunities over the years.
And you wish that we didn't have to have somebody from the opposite sex, especially when you go into the way that society has been set up, that we need a man to advocate for us. But that's unfortunately sometimes the way the world is. And I like to give the kudos to the gentlemen that are in our lives that advocate for us and give us the pathways to get there because they know that we are doing it ourselves. I like to call them girl dad. They're a girl dad.
So, sitting where you do today, how would you define success?
That's a great question. Actually, I think we could face it in so many different ways. I think success I could do two facets, right? From a work level and then from a life level. I think success from a working level to me means that you are making positive influence inside of your space within your company, that you're actually seeing the fruition and the fruit of your labor, making that impact. I think that that's huge. I think when you work in a community capacity and you actually see especially from a tech perspective, you see things being developed in the right way because of the work that you've done. I think that that makes a success. If you see people that you are coaching, right? So now I'm a mentor, which is weird, but like you see people coming up and doing amazing things and caring about the things that they're doing and remaining passionate. I think that defines, I think, a career success. From a life perspective, success, honestly, with all of the things that I've gone through, I really do think what makes things successful is to consistently be happy and being cognizant and sure and really understanding your own emotion. I think that that is a success, right? I'm not saying that you can't fly off the handle or get frustrated. That's par for the course. But if you can wake up in the morning and you can just find it within yourself to find the good and honestly to be proud of yourself and not compare yourself to others and don't be hard on yourself. I think we as women are way too hard on ourselves and we shouldn't because we're magical unicorns, period. And we need to not be so hard on ourselves. That is what to me is really a success. Kindness, support, and fairness and love, especially self-love. So hard to do, and I'm working on it.
I was going to say, that's
Yeah.
actually big, right? So what are some of the lessons that you've learned over the years? And with that,
Yeah.
what advice would you give to others?
I don't want to curse, but am I allowed to say one curse word?
Sure.
Don't take any shit.
Yeah.
Honestly, don't like 9 times out of 10, I hate to say this too, maybe 7 times out of 10, you're right, right? Trust your gut. 9
Yeah.
times out of 10, your gut's always right. You know, if you feel like you are being disrespected, don't step up to somebody, step down, let them live with them, right? That I think that that's very important. Also, just don't be afraid to make changes. I've done enough changes in my life, and I guarantee you that I'm still not done yet. But the older that I get, the more confident I am into making these different life decisions. You know, I think that being fearful is good, but just like the fool, do not be afraid to jump off the cliff into the unknown, right? Because you never know where you're going to go. And like Socrates even said it best, like, I cannot fear death because I don't know death. And therefore, how could I be afraid of the unknown? Take a chance. And guess what? You might fail, and failing happens, but you're going to learn from it and you're going to grow from it.
Yeah. Yeah. And that healthy amount of fear, but don't let it prohibit you. So, Brittany, what does She Lights the Way mean to you?
This is a space where women are going to be guiding the next wave for the future, right? I think that this is a space and a platform where it has been so desperately lacking, right? We hear from celebrities and you hear from leaders and super executives and all of this stuff, but it's just, I don't necessarily, albeit pretty neat, is it relatable? I don't know, right? And so I think with that, She Lights the Way is just a possible space where like-minded individuals can come together and really just be real and share their stories, and hopefully at some sort of capacity inspires others and forges connections. And that's huge.
Oh, I cannot thank you enough for spending your time
This
with
was
us
fun.
today. Yanni, I am so
This was
glad.
fun.
I have had so much fun today also.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Wow, what a kick-ass conversation with Brittany Istenes. She has certainly shown us the power of adaptability and the strength that comes from embracing life's uncertainties. If you want to learn more about Brittany and her work, you can connect with her on LinkedIn. That link is in the show notes. I love hearing from you, our listeners. If you have any feedback or suggestions for future episodes, please shoot me an email at nicole@shelightstheway.com or leave a comment on any of the social handles for the project. See you next time.